My god, I love this game. The story starts with you invading a dojo with your allies. As you progress, you reach the master, aka the Sifu of the place. You get to fight him and eventually manage to kill him like skadoosh. Then the camera pulls back and reveals that Sifu's child is hiding in the closet. Turns out, you've been playing as the villain this entire time and he has come to obtain a magical, mystical artifact. Then the bad guy calls him out and the child doesn't even think twice about revealing himself because he ain't a pussy. Oh, dude just game-ended the kid. But wait, he doesn't actually die. The child is revived thanks to a magical talisman, though its power is limited as every time it is used, the user will suffer accelerated aging. That is what the bad guys were looking for. Fast forward 8 years through one of the best opening sections in gaming happening, which also introduces you to the main enemies, as kind of like a training montage and stuff. Then you're left to embark on your quest to take down the 5 big bads, spread across 5 different levels or locations. The rest is up to you to find out, and I won't spoil anything here. Now I'm gonna be honest, you shouldn't be playing this game for its story. I mean, it is alright, like it does have its moments, but it's nothing special or like something that will move you. The voice acting is just okay.
Leave. I recognize that uniform. It represents a school for the weak and feeble.
There are 2 different endings in the game, but none of them is like, hooray! I also didn't understand why your character doesn't even have a name throughout the entire thing, like what? You can find more lore in the form of collectibles in the levels, but it's also nothing special. I don't have any strong feelings on the story, that's what I'm trying to say. It is mainly just here to be a backdrop to the absolutely fucking insane gameplay. This is what I said in my Sifu, but I'm having too much fun video. I loved Sleeping Dogs, and when I saw the gameplay of this game, I was like, yep, this is my jam, I'm gonna like this. And boy was I right.
Oh boy, yeah.
But before we talk about all the mechanics and stuff, I need to get this out of the way. Yes, the game is extremely difficult, at least when you first play it, because it has a very big learning curve. It is actually so difficult that people are unable to complete the second level and just straight up quitting. The developers are also reportedly adding accessibility options to widen the player base. Yeah, just keep that in mind when you start playing it. But hear me out here, once you do get past the learning curve, you will actually fall in love with your abilities as a greasy gamer with big will and even bigger balls. It is one of those games where when you have learned it, you feel like you have turned into a master. A Sifu, if I may. Seriously, the threshold for getting good here is amazing and it is so f***ing rewarding feeling. Not to brag, guys, but like I'm so good at this game now that I feel like I've turned on an easy mode because of my dedication to stick with it. Holy shit, I am the parry god for real, bro. It feels so good to see yourself keep getting better each time that you just want to keep going. Don't get me wrong, I'm still not at a point where I can do a no-death run of the entire game. I still die occasionally, but now I turn like over 90% of the enemies I face into my bitch, purely with my knowledge and mechanical skill obtained through time and practice. What I'm trying to say is, the game is not for everyone, but I promise if you can give it that dedication and time, you will enjoy it a lot. Now let's get into the actual meat of the game, shall we? No homo. You have your light attacks and heavy attacks, which you can mix and match along with other inputs like movement to create different combos. When an opponent falls to the ground, you can get your fists kissed by them and then pick them back up. Other than that, there's also special moves called focus attacks, which can be performed after filling your focus meter. The amount of combos given to you at the start is already good, plus you can unlock more moves as well, which we'll talk about more in a bit. I was initially worried that the developers were gonna overwhelm you with a shit ton of moves from the start, but thankfully they didn't. I also really appreciate the fact that the different combos at my disposal had their moments. What I'm trying to say here is, in games like Bayonetta, you don't really need to use different moves, but here they can serve an actual purpose most of the times while giving you the creative freedom as well. In terms of defense, you have the option to evade, block, parry, guard up, and guard down. At this point, if I have to explain to you what evading is, then there is no other way to put this, but in my most humble opinion, you are a fucking dumbass. For blocking, you just have to hold the button, but it's not as easy as it sounds. Blocking or getting hit with enemy attacks fills your structure meter, which, if completely filled, will leave you staggered like that one drop-dead gorgeous baddie you see at a wedding once and then never come across her for the rest of your life. Personal experience, guys, it's just pain. But the same also goes for your enemies as well, and once you break their structure, you can perform absolutely brutal finishing moves like this. Don't get it twisted though, because finishers are not always guaranteed to finish off an enemy. Sometimes your finisher is blocked by an enemy, and when that happens, the enemy turns Super Saiyan and basically levels up in the Mafia, fully recovering their health and becoming tougher to beat.
Why you bully me? You fucking bitch, why you bully me? Everyone
To not fill your structure meter and have a faster chance to punish, you also have the option to guard up and down, which is basically dodging enemy attacks at close range. But here you have to anticipate or know if the attack is gonna be a high or a low one. Successfully parrying an attack means you don't fill the structure meter and you can stop enemies dead in their tracks, giving you a very good opportunity to punish, alongside the fact that you can then also directional throw the enemy. But again, the time window for parrying in this game is very tight, unlike your mom's pussy. With everything I've told you about these defense options, do you see how every single one of these options have their own advantages and disadvantages? This is how all of them turn out to be essential and important in their own right. I love it when games give you an actual incentive alongside the options you have with the mechanics. Let me be honest here, boys. I can't fathom how this game's combat is so fluid and impactful at the same time. It has a level of satisfaction you can probably never even dream of giving a girl. Again, this is another one of those things you will appreciate more when you get good, as you'll see this game maintaining that sense of flow while also making every hit mean something. The visual and audio outputs convey that feeling of weight, that oomph so well, it's actually ridiculous. The only big problem I have with this game is its camera, because my god, it can be so utterly atrocious sometimes. For a game that is already as difficult as this, that is pretty much a sin in my book. There were moments where the camera had me going like,
Fuck out of the way! I can't see! There are cars there, motherfucker!
Coming back, I gotta mention that Sifu has some of the best combat animations in any game I've ever seen, and you might have already been able to tell that. Like, even stuff like scaling something in the levels or vaulting over low objects look and feel buttery smooth. Your fighting moves feel impeccable from start to finish, no matter how many times you do them. The stylishness of this game truly feels like it was inspired by will.i.am the Drip. All this satisfying action happening to straight up banging music is such a badass vibe, I can't put it into words, man. The composer of this game says that he has never worked on a game's soundtrack before. If it's true, talk about hitting a home run on your first try, man. Every fight has this sense of rhythm to it, especially when you get good at the game. Every level's OST has its own identity woven into it. My personal favorite is the club soundtrack. Very strong John Wick vibes. Sound effects from everything are also chef's kiss and are a big part of every hit in the fights being as satisfying as I mentioned. The only problem I have with the audio side of things is with the audio balancing. What I mean by that is that the music and the sound effects are so much louder compared to the dialogue, sometimes you can't hear shit. The environments are also a big part of the combat here. There are scenarios where you have the option to approach fights from a different direction. Bruv, you can actually stealth, or sometimes just avoid them completely by selecting a more passive dialogue option when you are given the choice to do so. You have objects you can vault over to create some breathing room. The enemies lose their balance for a bit if they're hit into a wall. Your finishers change depending on where you are. You can throw shit like bottles or bricks at your enemies to stun them. Plus, we haven't even talked about the different full-blown weapons yet, boy. You have weapons like a staff, baseball bats, small swords, etc., with each having different style of attacks, all of which feel absolutely brutal. But it gets even better because you can also perform combos and focus attacks specific to these weapons as well. My goodness, this game is good. While we're on the topic of environments, let's just appreciate how good the art style used here is. I mean, we probably have seen this kind of painted art style before, but its implementation here is also really damn good. Sifu is one of those games where every level has its own personality and vibe to it, and if you know me,
It's all about the vibe.
there are some times where that common problem in games happens here as well, where the game kind of stops for a second when it saves, but other than that, the performance is also rock solid pretty much all the time. The biggest technical issue I faced is that the game crashed on me twice, but after a few new patches, things seem to have been fixed. Moving from one stage to the other never feels samey. The locations have a sense of character to them, unlike most e-girls. The core gameplay loop is already fantastic, but there are also super cool set pieces and settings here that pay homage to classic martial arts media, and literally none of these spice things up at the cost of the actual gameplay. One minute you're fighting on top of a falling elevator, the next you're transported to this void-like place which practically acts as a combat arena. I also love how this game changes art styles to accommodate for even cooler situations like this one. My personal favorite trope here has to be when the camera zooms out to the side and you are left with this style that just keeps going, giving the fights a different kind of hecticness. There's also smaller stuff that can spice things up as well, like here when you have to pay attention to this toxic liquid while you're being jumped by so many guys. That sounded so sus. Let's talk enemy variety now. The amount of enemy variety in Sifu feels perfect for a game like this. Not too much, not too less, just right. And it plays really well into that learning curve I mentioned earlier. There's a sort of strategy involved here as well, because at times enemies will be ganging up all around you, pulling out all kinds of moves depending on the variety, and deciding who to prioritize first can prove essential. Very essential, in fact. You face a lot of very well designed mini bosses when traversing through the levels, and later on these types show up with other mini bosses and standard enemies as well during normal combat encounters, adding even more to this juggling act kind of combat. The boss fights here are overall superb. Bosses can be super frustrating on the first few tries around, but once you realize that patience is key, you start to see how special they are in terms of classic game design. Each boss fight has 2 phases, and while some of the moves are repeated in the second phase, there are so much more added to them, giving the phases that kind of familiar but new vibe and identity every single time. One of my most hated things in difficult games like Dark Souls is when enemies pull out stupid ass bullshit like one-hit kills that are laughably difficult to avoid. Thankfully shit like this doesn't happen here, and the closest annoyance to that is when bosses spam goofy ass attacks like this. The boss fights in this game will only start to feel fair when you have spent a decent amount of time with them. It is so fun when you finally learn to hold back a little the first few times to figure out and download the enemy's moveset, to then finally go ahead and whoop their asses harder with each subsequent playthrough of a level. Sifu boss fights truly do the Mortal Kombat thing. And if there's something that is gonna make you put down this game for good, it's these fights. But as I mentioned earlier, don't be discouraged. Death is one of the most important parts of this game, and this is where the roguelike style comes in. You have a death counter which goes up every time you die, and every time you revive, you age by the number that is on your death counter. This means you have to be more careful each time you die because you will age more the next time. The death counter is reduced by 1 each time you defeat tougher enemies like the Super Saiyan dudes or the mini boss type enemies I mentioned earlier. In boss fights, when you complete a phase, your death counter goes down by 1. On every death, you're given a chance to buy new abilities using the XP you have gained by defeating enemies. Remember when I said plus you can unlock more moves as well, which we'll talk about more in a bit? Well, this is that bit. There is no move here that can be called useless because I have seen other players utilize them in their playstyles, even if I didn't like them for mine. Some of the moves and abilities you can buy are absolutely game-changing. When you unlock a move, it is saved for you for that particular run only, so to permanently make a move yours, you have to buy it 5 times. This actually makes you think more carefully about where you're spending your XP. Other than that, you can find these reward statues in levels where you can select the reward like increased health, structure, reset death count, etc. For every 10 years of age you gain, your health bar is reduced by a slight amount, but your damage is also increased. Another thing that happens for every 10 years is that one of your seals break, which means you can no longer buy moves that were associated with that particular seal. Damn, that was a mouthful.
That's what she said.
The nice thing is, if you fuck up in a level in a later run, only the run in which you completed the level with the lowest stage is saved. What I've seen a lot of people do is that they wait till they die by reaching their 70s before they replay the levels, and I gotta say, I really just didn't like that approach. What I personally did is I went back and played a level immediately after finishing it. I did that multiple times until I was somewhat satisfied with my age at the end of the level. Only then did I decide to move on to the next level. But hey, as 14-year-olds say, my life, Dua Lipa new rules. When you're going through a level, you will eventually obtain a shortcut key. Once you have completed that level, that key is permanently saved with you. This allows you to pretty much skip huge chunks of a level while replaying them, which is nothing short of a saving grace. Like shit, sometimes a shortcut can get you straight to a boss fight, which is great. This helps a lot with the game not feeling too repetitive on multiple playthroughs. Speaking of repetitive, don't let the fact that things like the enemy types, the weapons, the locations, etc. don't change or randomize every single time you come back to a level fool you into thinking that this game gets stale quick. The truth is far from this as the gap between Long Beach Griffey's teeth. Sifu demands you to not just barely know, but thoroughly learn all the tactics and abilities your enemies have and your best tactics and abilities against them. It demands you to not be sorry, but
be better.
There's not a moment while playing this game where you can just turn your brain off. You always have to keep paying attention to your positioning, your attacks, defense, your environment, but somehow it all just feels natural. That's the real magic here. This game makes you want to keep learning and keep getting better so that eventually you can clear house in fights you originally struggled with. It doesn't seem forced or overbearing with artificial difficulty. It is the game genuinely, organically keeping you engaged. So in conclusion, as I said in the very first line of this video, my god, I love this game. It is a game I appreciated the more I played it. This game has had me addicted for the past 2 weeks, and that's the reason this review has taken so much time. And also because I got kinda burnt out because of family functions, and also fell into a cycle of self-loathing with definite signs of depression because of personal reasons, and the fact that this channel isn't growing no matter how hard I try, while other shitty lazy clickbait content channels are booming, but I don't want to ruin your mood by talking about it. The game is priced at $40, but in regions like here in India, it is as low as $12, and that is pretty much a steal for this game if you're into games like this. I 100% agree that it's not a game for everyone, but if you're someone like me and can stick with it, you will have come loads of pure gamery fun here. So thank you all so much for watching this video till the end. If you enjoyed, please be sure to like, share, subscribe, and also hit the bell notification icon so that you may never miss out on any future content. Some of my other videos are on your screen right now, including my latest track Flip the Script, which is streaming on all platforms. Consider checking them out as well, and I'll see you next time. Bye.